Stay tuned to find out why my husband never opened these antibiotics.
I want to share my story so that others will not have to suffer like I did. I have a hard time using my legs. I had surgery, and before the surgery, I was walking fine. After the surgery, I had antibiotics, and then a problem arose and I had some more antibiotics, and that's when I started to notice during that time that I started having problems walking from one end of the room to another. And I had to rest in the evening, and by the morning I felt okay because I had rested, and then it would be like a vicious cycle over and over and over again. When I brought it to a doctor's attention that I was having a hard time walking, she blamed it on stress. And I thought to myself, if I'm having a hard time walking because of stress, then everybody should have a hard time walking, because we all have stress. And the only thing she recommended was taking something for anxiety. And I just wasn't buying it. I eventually ended up fainting and in the hospital, and I thought, well, this is it. They're going to find out what's wrong with me. Instead, they told me that they don't know what causes people to faint. At the time, too, I started seeing a chiropractor, and that was helpful, but it wasn't a cure either. They started recommending that I have an epidural. Actually, I went to physical therapy because I did have low back pain. The manager there saw that I wasn't using my legs properly, and he said, "You need to see a neurologist." Well, I saw a neurologist in the hospital, or so I was told. I was like, they started giving me all these different medications to try, and they made me sleep the whole day. So anyways, I said to him, well, I saw a neurologist in the hospital, and they said it's not a neurological problem. So he said, well, you need a second opinion, or you need to see a spine specialist. I went back to my family doctor, because I always had to go back to my family doctor to get a referral. And she acted like, and this was the same doctor that said I had problems with anxiety, which is why I couldn't walk. And she just kind of acted like I was making all this up, and I don't know. She was very condescending to me. So I was getting frustrated, but I just kind of stuck with her because I thought, well, I'll go to a specialist and they will figure this out. And that doctor didn't think I had MS, and then I did see a neurologist and they confirmed that I did not have MS. I just decided, after trying to find out what was wrong with me for a whole year, I went from one doctor to another. I decided, well, I guess I'll try the epidural. And then that's what made me even worse. And I got to the point where I couldn't even fix myself something to eat. So I finally ended up getting a wheelchair, and it was like, you know, hey, this is great. I was so happy to, you know, get a wheelchair just because I could semi-function then. I asked one of my sons to take a video of me while I was gardening to show how my legs were working. And this was over 10 years ago. So I've been dealing with this a long time.
I missed doing things, so my kids helped me get outside, bring me my gardening tools. My legs turned to rubber, and I'd spend the rest of the week in bed in terrific pain, unable to move.
That was the last time we took the scooter outside. First of all, it's heavy and difficult to transport, and I didn't want to take a chance of it getting ruined if it decided to rain suddenly. But the funny thing is, with the video, I didn't know who I was going to show it to. I made it just as proof of how my legs were working. I kept going back to the fact that antibiotics somehow played a role in this, and I realized that a lot of people do not take the warnings that you get from the pharmacist with your prescription. They don't take them seriously. One of the things that they don't mention on the prescription papers is that the side effects can be permanent. I have a problem not only using my legs, I have a problem with dizziness. Like, let's say someone uses the remote and channel surfs. Well, I have a problem with that. I have to look away. Just different things cause dizziness. So that's one of the problems that I have. Occasionally I have a problem with fainting. I have not fainted in a long time though, because I know how to prevent it, and one of the ways I prevent it is to not walk. And I can't walk far anyways, because it's very, very painful. I learned how to prevent the fainting. So if I get overheated, I could faint. So I always make sure I don't get too hot. I have to go to air conditioning if I do start to feel like I could possibly faint. And I keep water with me all the time. So let me see, there's the chronic pain now, the dizziness, the fainting. Oh, and just to throw in another thing, they discovered that I have this rare heart condition called Brugada syndrome. When I first found out I had that and I looked up what Brugada syndrome was, you could actually die in your sleep. So can you imagine that? I had a really hard time falling asleep. But they did give me an external defibrillator. It was like a vest. I was like, okay, if something happens, I have the vest. So eventually I was able to fall asleep. But it took several weeks before I could fall asleep easily. I ended up going to a specialist because I was the only patient my doctor had with this condition. And so I went to another specialist, and they had like 37 patients with Brugada syndrome. So he said, you're low risk, don't worry about it, you don't need the defibrillator vest. So I finally got past that. But, and then years later I found out that I do not have the genetic form of Brugada syndrome. And that in itself makes me wonder, well, could that be one of the side effects of antibiotics? I don't know, I could be wrong there. But anyways, I haven't had an antibiotic in 10 years. I educated myself, and I realized that a lot of people do not understand how to take antibiotics. It's like the doctors put this fear in us. Well, if you don't start this antibiotic, there's always a chance that, something could happen. Well, the something could happen is that you could die. Now, we do need antibiotics, but we need to learn when to take them. So I want to help the doctors by educating people. The doctor does not have time to educate us. We go in, he sees us, he's not sure what's wrong with us, and, here, take this antibiotic. We need to know more about when we should take an antibiotic. Okay. you should take an antibiotic if you have a bacterial infection. It does not work on viruses. I know I've shared a lot of information in this video, but there are a few very important things that I would like you to know. First of all, there is a website called Medline Plus, and someone in one of the doctor's offices told me about this website.
This article, courtesy of Medline Plus from the National Library of Medicine, is on the common cold. What is the common cold? I think most of us know it. Adults have an average of 2 to 3 colds per year, and children have even more. Colds are more common in the winter and spring, but you can get them at any time. So what causes the common cold? More than 200 different viruses. They're very contagious. They can spread from person to person through the air and close personal contact. You can also get infected when you touch something that has the virus on it and then touch your eyes, mouth, or nose. For example, you could get a cold after you shake hands with someone who has a cold or touch a doorknob that has the germs on it and then touch your face. Here are the treatments. Getting lots of rest. Drink plenty of fluids. I personally avoid sugary drinks, and I find that hot peppermint tea is the best drink to help clear up my sinuses. I cannot say how well these other suggestions work because I do not use them, but in a future video, I would like to share what I use to find relief when I have a cold. What I really want to point out here is that antibiotics will not help with a cold. Antibiotics help with bacterial infections, not with viral infections such as colds. This section is important also. Most people who have a cold will feel better after a week or two. However, some people who get a cold may develop other illnesses such as bronchitis or pneumonia. This is more common in people with weakened immune systems, asthma, or other respiratory conditions. Contact your doctor if you or your child have symptoms that concern you, such as trouble breathing or fast breathing, dehydration, fever that lasts longer than 4 days, symptoms that last more than 10 days without improvement, symptoms such as fever or cough that improve but then return or worsen, or worsening of chronic medical conditions. Can the common cold be prevented? These are the rules I try to live by. Washing your hands often with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Avoiding touching your face, nose, or mouth with unwashed hands, which is something you definitely want to be aware of when you are not at home. Avoiding close contact. Anytime I see someone with a runny nose or watery eyes, I keep my distance from them. When my husband was sick with a cold 2 years in a row and I got his cold, the third time he got sick, I slept on the couch for 2 weeks. I don't know if I needed to be on the couch for 2 whole weeks, but that's what I did, and I never got sick. And next, you definitely want to clean surfaces when you have a family, especially young children. I washed doorknobs and light switches. Keep your bathrooms clean that everyone uses. I noticed that when my kids got sick often from being around other kids, I did not get their illness except on a rare occasion. Cover coughs and sneezes with a tissue, then throw away the tissue and wash your hands. Lastly, stay at home when you are sick. I know it's difficult when you don't want to use up your sick days, but it's always a good idea to stay home 1 or 2 days. Let's hope that you are learning ways to avoid getting sick in the first place. This web page was last updated November 16, 2022. Today is March 9th, 2023. My husband received the first bottle of antibiotics when he had a cold. He had the antibiotics at home and he could use it at any time. But when I shared with him that antibiotics would do nothing for a cold and germs become resistant if you continue to use antibiotics, and they may not work for you in the future, he decided not to take them. The second bottle of antibiotics was prescribed to my husband when he'd been complaining of sporadic stomach pain. Since I had been studying when to use antibiotics a long time, I realized something did not add up. I asked about what he's been eating and all the medications he's been using. He'd been taking one full-strength aspirin every day because he had heard it was good for your heart. He stopped the aspirin and the pain went away.
Fluoroquinolones are the most powerful antibiotic you can take, and they are known for rupturing tendons and causing a lot of problems. So, if your doctor recommends one, please ask them to prescribe something besides a fluoroquinolone. There are many different names, so I can't list them all. Do a search on the antibiotic that your doctor has given you. Look on Medline Plus, or you can do a search and ask, is this particular antibiotic a fluoroquinolone? It's always good to know for sure, because a fluoroquinolone is the worst antibiotic you could take. If you're having a hard time talking to your doctor about antibiotics and whether or not they're a fluoroquinolone, get a second opinion. I know a lot of people hesitate to do that because they're concerned that their insurance will not cover a second opinion. But from my experience, they will. And you can always get another doctor.